Ladies and gentlemen, Darren Fox is him. The Sacramento Kings get a big home win over the Dallas Mavericks, keeping the separation that they need in the Western Conference and proving that you should trust and believe in Monte McNair's squad. You're listening to Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season long. Today presented by Rocket Money. Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10 News. And boy, was it a playoff atmosphere here inside the Golden One Center. Dare I say the closest thing we've had to a playoff game in the history of the Golden One Center. I thought it was going to be that Kings and New Orleans Pelicans game when the NBA world was shut down for COVID. We were spoiled of that important game for the standings. Well, finally, it seems like it's been made up to us with this third seed Kings versus fourth seed Mavericks. Second night of a back-to-back. The two teams playing each other again. The debut of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving together. If the Mavericks win, the Kings and Mavericks are tied record-wise, but the Mavericks, because of win percentage and the tiebreaker, would be in the third spot. The Kings would fall to fourth. All of these reasons why this game was so significant and so important. And what do the Sacramento Kings do? The same thing they've done over and over and over again this season, and that's respond. You know, one of the best ways to find out what a team is or who a team is, find out the identity of a team and what you can believe versus what is maybe a flash in the pan, is by the habits that that team develops and shows repeatedly over the course of the season. And there's no denying that the Sacramento Kings have developed a clear habit for responding when they absolutely need to respond. Whether it's snapping losing streaks, getting back on track on the road, taking advantage of national TV games, or tonight after getting beat down in one quarter but losing at home last night to the Doncic-less Mavericks and having them sneak to within one game of you with this playoff race really getting going. 27 games remaining on the season now, 26 after tonight. The Kings respond to that by not only winning here tonight in the Golden One Center 133-128, but doing it by facing a lot of the same challenges they faced last night, by having their momentum erased quickly at the end of the first half. The Kings were up by 12 points going into like the final 4 minutes of the first half, and suddenly they were trailing by 2 at halftime. So they faced adversity in multiple stages of this game. Looked like fourth quarter-wise, they were able to get the stops, the same stops they were able to get last night, but the offense wasn't there. And then, of course, Darren Fox and the Sacramento Kings find a way to force overtime, and then in overtime, they take control. Unless I'm mistaken, the Sacramento Kings have not lost in the 3 overtime games they have played so far this season. The Kings respond again. This is why Monte McNair trusts this roster. This is why Monte McNair said in his press conference, which if you missed it, you can catch it on yesterday's episode of Locked On Kings. This is why Monte said one of the main goals for the Kings on trade deadline day was to protect the core. And part of this core, the sixth part of the core, Malik Monk, was not playing in tonight's game. He was out with an ankle sprain. Hopefully he will return soon. But the Kings showed why they needed to protect their core. And then they had the depth, those that aren't necessarily part of a core, pieces that many fans wanted to see the Kings trade away or use to try and get pieces to add to the rotation and add to the depth of this roster. You had them step up tonight as well. Trust in Monte McNair, trust in the roster that Monte McNair has put together, and trust in the guys that Monte McNair has put his trust in. I know, and I've gone back and forth with you a lot over the last 48 to 72 hours talking about, you know, what do the Sacramento Kings do at the trade deadline? Did the Kings make a mistake by not making any kind of moves, or did the Kings do the right thing standing put? If you've listened to me, you know where I stand. The Kings standing put, I think, was the absolute right move. Some of you feel aggressively differently, and that's okay. Tonight is what you want. Tonight is what we all want. So even if we disagree, in reality, this is why Monte McNair chose to stick with this team. And this is why I believe that you should believe in this team and their ability to maintain this spot. The Dallas Mavericks threw a lot of the best that they had at the Kings tonight, and they were still able to overcome it. This was a playoff game, or the closest thing the Kings have had to a playoff game in 16 years. And the Kings not only won it, they did so on the backs of different players at different moments, and we're going to get into that and go through just the different areas of where different players and even the team as a whole deserve the credit for pulling out this victory. I cannot understate the significance of this win. And it's not just standings-wise. Of course, now the Kings get a little more separation. They get their separation back. So where they started standings-wise at the start of this two-game series is where they're finishing. Splitting this series 1-1 is excellent. Now, of course, you have to finish strong here before the All-Star break and handle your business on Valentine's Day in Phoenix against the Suns, who are not going to be with KD yet. And you still have to play the Suns 2 more times after the All-Star break, assuming KD is back. This game is, of course, extremely important coming up on Tuesday. But based off of what we saw tonight, you expect the Sacramento Kings to respond. But it's not only a standings thing. It's a belonging. It's a confidence. The Kings know that a playoff atmosphere like tonight, taking on a playoff team like they did against the Dallas Mavericks, and there's a good chance, let's say the Kings fall to 4 and the Dallas Mavericks fall to 5. This is your opening playoff series. Like the Kings showed that they can compete. The Kings showed that they belonged, and they didn't just beat the Mavericks because they were red hot from three-point range or everything was going right for them. No, they had to grind out a win and specifically do things and adjust to what the Dallas Mavericks were doing in order to become successful. That's what a playoff team does. That's what good teams do. It reminds the fan base and it reminds the team, I don't know if they needed to be reminded, but it reminds the team that they're where they belong. These significant, important games in the middle to high up standings, seeds in the pack of the Western Conference, the Sacramento Kings belong here. They can hold a candle, hold a torch to whatever is thrown at them or in this bracket, so to speak, or in this tier of NBA talent in the Western Conference. The Kings belong here, and they reminded us tonight. All right, let's talk about Darren freaking Fox, a.k.a. him. Just rename the Clutch Player of the Year award. I think it's named after Jerry West, if I'm not mistaken. No disrespect to Jerry, absolute legend, the logo. Just rename it after Darren Fox. Or if nothing else, if we can compromise, meet in the middle, just give it to Darren Fox now. Or maybe you can't award it until the end of the season, the award ceremony, that everything goes. Just engrave De'Aaron's name on it, take a picture of it, send it to De'Aaron, put out a press release that there's nothing he can do to lose it at this point, and there's nothing anybody else can do to catch him. It is De'Aaron Fox's award this season. Nobody can take it away from him. Even if he didn't have another big clutch moment for the remainder of the season, which is impossible, of course he's going to, and he's going to have those moments in the playoffs. And finally, those who are not aware of what Fox is doing or actively choosing to ignore what Fox is doing because they don't want to watch Kings basketball or don't care about Kings basketball, finally they're not going to be able to ignore it anymore. And thankfully, I think most people are now starting to really come around and are not able to ignore it at this point in time. But even if De'Aaron were not to have another clutch moment for the remainder of the season, he has this award locked down. And tonight is just another example of that. At the end of the third quarter, De'Aaron Fox had just 10 points in this game. In the fourth quarter, De'Aaron Fox had 12 points, 5 of 10 shooting from the field, and 1 steal. That's just in the fourth quarter. That's not at the end of the fourth. 12 points in the fourth quarter, 5 of 10 shooting in the fourth quarter, and 1 steal. That steal was a massive steal that actually put the Kings ahead. It was the Kings double-teamed Luka Doncic after he crossed half court. We're going to talk about the team defense on Luka Doncic in a little bit here on this pod because it was excellent tonight. And De'Aaron jumped the passing lane after Luka tried to pass out of the double team, got the steal, transition dunk. It was a very, very emphatic dunk, which we love to see out of the bouncy and flashy De'Aaron Fox. Every once in a while, he'll pull that out of his bag. That steal was massive, but that's the fourth quarter. Then in overtime. Now, the fourth quarter is 12 minutes. Overtime, 5 minutes. And in that 5-minute overtime, De'Aaron Fox had 14 points, shot 3 of 4 from the field, and a perfect 8 of 8 from the free throw line. To me, honestly, the 8 of 8 from the free throw line is more impressive than the 3 of 4 from the field and the 5 of 10 from the field in the fourth quarter. De'Aaron Fox has clutch. I mean, the definition of clutch in the dictionary should have a picture of De'Aaron Fox, or at the very least, De'Aaron Fox's signature next to it at this point in time. De'Aaron Fox is absolutely him. His game as a whole, 36 points, 12 of 23 shooting from the field. That's over 50%. 12 of 14 from the free throw line, 5 assists, and 2 steals. And with all these amazing offensive numbers, with all these great offensive, all this great offensive output that he showed in the fourth quarter and in overtime that the Kings absolutely had to have in order to win this game, he won this game for the Sacramento Kings in so many different ways. It's not as impressive at what he did defensively tonight. And I'm not just talking about how well he played defensively in the fourth quarter and defensively in overtime, and he was excellent. We had a very fun battle between him and Kyrie Irving in that fourth quarter and in overtime. It was a blast watching the two of them go back and forth and go at one another. But what De'Aaron Fox was able to do defensively for this entire game, I already talked about the big steal that he came up with and the dunk in the fourth quarter. Also had a steal in overtime as well. Like, De'Aaron was so good defensively throughout this game. His on-ball defense, he was smothering guards, smothering ball handlers, whether it was Kyrie or Luka or whoever he happened to match up against. Very Davion Mitchell off-night-esque. I don't know if off-night is sharing some tips to De'Aaron on how to be a good on-ball defender, or if De'Aaron has finally just unlocked that part of his game, and Mike Brown and his coaching staff have brought that out of De'Aaron. But he was excellent. And then throughout the course of the entire game, even when he wasn't smothering ball handlers, how good De'Aaron has become at defending with his feet, right? And we always knew he was quick, one of the quickest guards, if not the quickest guard in the league, and we see how he uses that quickness on the offensive end of the floor. Now we're really seeing how he uses that quickness on the defensive end of the floor, where you're going against Kyrie Irving, who's another one of the quickest, most this isn't a word, but burstiest guards in the NBA, right? Kyrie goes from 0 to 100 real quick, and De'Aaron Fox can cut him off and meet him just as quickly. Like, De'Aaron defensively, this was De'Aaron Fox's most complete game of the season for sure, maybe of his entire career. Now, he scored more points than this over his career. He's had a better shooting percentage than this over his career, had more impressive highlight moments than this over his career. But in terms of complete performance from a superstar who won the game and carried his team to the victory, this was the best, I think, that we've seen from De'Aaron Fox, and still not the best that he has yet to offer. And we're going to see even better, in my opinion, when we get to playoff time. So please tell me how in the world Paul George and Jaren Jackson Jr. are selected over him. No, I'm not over that, even though he is going to be an all-star like he deserves this year. The fact that De'Aaron Fox is a freaking injury replacement all-star. He gets there, it doesn't matter. He still gets the money, he still gets the recognition. It doesn't matter. I'm just bitter about this because I can be. The fact that De'Aaron Fox is going to go into the All-Star game as an injury replacement and not as someone who is selected to go in by the fans, by the media, and by coaches, and by players is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I understand why Jaren Jackson Jr. got in. I understand he's on the second seed Memphis Grizzlies. I understand he's right now maybe the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year, and he leads the league in block shots, whatever. De'Aaron Fox absolutely 100% deserved to be in the same day, the same time that Domantas Sabonis was announced. But whatever, he's still there. He absolutely deserves to be there, and hopefully he can even use that stage. Don't let that game be close. Boy, I tell you what, if the All-Star game is close, De'Aaron Fox better be on the floor. And if De'Aaron Fox is on the floor, whichever team he's playing on in the All-Star game, that team is going to win. Mark my words on that. But it goes beyond just De'Aaron Fox, right? The Kings as a team got so much from just from everybody. Like, you can look, I can point to different guys in different moments, like Terence Davis, for example, right? Terence Davis had a big offensive first half. I think he had like 17 points in the first half or something like that. Second half, quieted down a little bit, but had some big defensive plays in the second half. Also had a big corner three. I think it was in overtime. Yeah, the Dallas Mavericks hit the first basket of overtime. It was a three-pointer. Terence Davis immediately responded with a corner three. Offensively, he did great. Also had some good defensive moments. Kevin Huerter had a horrendous start shooting-wise to this game. Offensively, didn't do much in the first half. Second half, had some incredibly crucial moments.
Well, hey, everybody. It was about here where
where my camera and microphone completely crapped out and I had no idea. And I continued to record the rest of a podcast like an idiot, not knowing that things went wrong. So instead of waiting to get this podcast out later, and as if I'm going to be productive on Super Bowl Sunday to get this podcast out, I just thought, you know what? I'm going to take you into a lower quality laptop recording from down here below the Golden One Center. So continuing on with what we were talking about, I actually want to give you an opportunity to hear less of me, lucky you, and hear more from Sacramento Kings players. First, you're going to hear from Terence Davis, who I had the opportunity to ask about Darren Fox's game, not just his offense, but his defense. And you're going to love what Davis had to say about Foxy. Terence, of course, De'Aaron was big offensively there in overtime and in the fourth quarter, but what did you make of his defense throughout the course of the game, especially against Kyrie?
I was just about to say that he was also big defensively. Big time plays defensively down the stretch, especially at steal to go up. I think it was before the end of regulation, but man, he is him, man. All-star, he deserved it. Just major. He's just him, man. That's all I can say. He's him, for sure. Darren Fox, of course, was at the podium, too, after his big night, and I wanted to ask him about this team's ability to respond in big games and respond to bad losses and not let things spin out of control. And Darren gave all the credit to head coach Mike Brown.
I think a lot of it has to do with the way Mike gets on us. I feel like everybody would rather not get to that point, but I think as a team, we learn quickly, and when there's a quick turnaround, I feel like we've been able to adjust, and that's Mike's biggest thing. When something's not working, or if something is working, you continue to go to it. If something's not working, you quickly adjust. And I think everybody knows how tactical and how savvy he is, and I think he's instilled that into all of the players.
Now, like I said at the top of the podcast, today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. And Rocket Money is a financial asset that I use every single day. I'm in charge of the finances for my family, which is a terrifying thing if you know how bad I am at math. I usually have a massive scoreboard above a court to do the math for me, right? Well, Rocket Money helps do a lot of the math for me with its financial budgeting, its management. It helps you put together budgets, helps you put together saving plans. And what I love about it is it'll break down where your money is going, where you're spending your money. It'll show you how much money per month or per week that you're spending on like maybe coffee in the morning or at the grocery store or whatever it is. It breaks it all down and does all that for you. But arguably the best tool that Rocket Money offers that'll save you money is their ability to detect and cancel subscriptions. Over 80% of people who have subscriptions don't realize that they have some that they've forgotten about. Maybe you subscribe to this one service to watch your favorite show or watch this one show that was on there, but once the show was over, you never watched it again and you kind of forgot that you had it, but your money is still going to it. Plus, there are also subscriptions out there that they make it extremely difficult to cancel. Rocket Money will not only help you identify those subscriptions, Rocket Money will help you cancel every single one, including those hard to cancel ones. Give Rocket Money a try. Stop throwing your money away, cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. It's not very often that I get to talk positively about the Sacramento Kings defense, so I'm going to take the opportunity to do that here. And to be honest with you, if the Sacramento Kings had found a way to win last night's game against Dallas, I would have been very happy to talk about the defense too, because in last night's game, the Kings held the Dallas Mavericks to 48 points in the second half. Well, tonight's game, the Kings held the Dallas Mavericks to 50 points in the second half. Anytime the Kings can hold a team to 50 or less than a half, that's a big win for this team. Of course, offensively, they also still have to put up the numbers that we expect to make those strong defensive quarters and halves worthwhile. And while it looked like offensively at times the Sacramento Kings were going to struggle the same way they struggled in the fourth quarter in game one against the Mavericks, it's the Kings team defense that really shined tonight, in particular their team defense against Luka Doncic. Luka is a absolute first ballot Hall of Famer already, right? And how many clutch moments and big shots has Luka Doncic hit all over the course of his short career to this point, right? How many times has he scored 40 points, 50 points? Like, Luka is an absolute star. And in those big moments is where he tends to shine the brightest. So I was expecting, with the Kings and Mavericks going down to the wire in the fourth quarter and the game going into overtime, I was expecting a Luka Doncic takeover. Well, the Kings did not allow that. Mike Brown shared with us after the game that the Kings were not going to allow Luka to get his opportunities. They were going to put it on guys like Kyrie and Christian Wood. And Kyrie was excellent in the fourth quarter and overtime. They were going to put it on the rest of the Mavericks to kind of go out there and beat them, but they were going to throw double team after double team at Luka and not let him get to his spots. Check this out. Luka Doncic, in the fourth quarter and overtime combined, just 2 points on 1 of 4 shooting from the field, also had 2 turnovers. Now, the 2 points is what's going to jump off the page to a lot of people. Oh my God, Luka Doncic only scored 2 points in the fourth quarter and in overtime. That's crazy. What jumps more out to me is the fact that he took just 4 shots. And 3 of them were in overtime. And the one shot that he did hit was at the very, very, very end of overtime, where the Kings allowed him to get a layup and didn't want to foul him when they were up by I think 3 points or more at that point. And then they sent Darren Fox back to the line where he hit his clutch free throws. Like, Luka was a almost complete non-factor in the fourth quarter and in overtime. And it was the Kings not allowing Luka to even have the opportunity to be the hero like he normally is for this team. Not only did they not let him score, they didn't even let him get good looks. The amount of times that they forced him to pick up his dribble and pass out of a double team or pass before the double team got there and not get a good look at the basket, not get a good shot off. And even the 4 shots that he took, with the exception of the layup that he made, were all very well contested. Sacramento did a very good job of isolating Luka and taking him out of this game in crunch time, and it ended up being crucial towards the success of the Sacramento Kings and them ultimately winning this game. Tons of credit goes to Terence Davis for how he played on Luka Doncic and his help defense on Luka Doncic. Ton of credit goes to Kevin Huerter. Defense credit goes to Harrison Barnes. Some of that credit goes to Darren Fox. It was a defensive by committee performance to help shut down Luka there at the end. And that's something that's really significant that not a lot of teams have been able to do over the course of Luka's career. The Kings forced 16 turnovers, leading to 24 points tonight. That's huge, forcing 16 turnovers. Now, the Kings had only single digits in turnovers. Let me grab the box score really quick. Yeah, the Kings only turned the ball over 7 times tonight. That's incredible. So they took care of the basketball and then forced Dallas into 16 turnovers, scoring 24 points off of those turnovers. Just excellent. Now, here's the number or 2 of the numbers that excite me the most. The Kings outscored the Mavericks 74-46 in the paint. That's a massive margin. And how many times have we seen the Kings be the ones getting outscored by a big margin in the paint, right? 74 points in the paint for the Sacramento Kings, holding the Mavericks to only 46 points in the paint. Anytime the Kings hold a team to in the 40s or lower in paint scoring, Mike Brown is thrilled with that. So to see the Kings on the right end of that differential was very, very good to see. And then the Mavs only had 8 second chance points. That's worth pointing out because they had 18 second chance points last night on way too many offensive rebounds. It was like 14 offensive rebounds or something like that. The Kings did a good job handling that side of the ball, handling the glass in that way. And to me, this is just another example of this team's ability to adjust and make the adjustments that they have to make. And they can make it between 2 games against the same opponent. They can make it between 2 games against different opponents. They can make it with a game or with a day off or a couple days off or a practice day or just a shoot around, or they can make it during a half. They can make it during a quarter break. They can make it even during a timeout in the middle of a quarter. This team consistently has shown an ability to adjust when they need to. And credit to Mike Brown and his coaching staff for not only continuing to hold this group accountable, but getting them to make the adjustments that they need to make. And if some guys are playing who are not making the right adjustments, then Mike will have them sit on the bench and find someone who will step up and will play the game the right way and make those adjustments that the Kings need. Now, if I'm being nitpicky about anything, and there's some things to be nitpicky about, I do want to talk about Mike Brown's decision to not call a timeout at the end of the fourth quarter. Kings got a big stop. Darren Fox took the ball up the floor. There were like 11 seconds left or something like that. Mike Brown had a timeout to use, elected not to use it. It ended up in a isolation straightaway 3 for Darren Fox. He never even passed the ball, never even tried to attack the basket. Missed the shot. Of course, game goes into overtime. I personally believe if you have a timeout in that spot, you use it. I understand it allows defenses to get set, get their best defenders into the game, and try and set up as best they can to prevent the Kings from scoring. But it also allows Jordi Fernandez and the Kings coaching staff to draw up something and try and get the Kings in the best position to score versus kind of some schoolyard isolation. Now, I understand Darren Fox was on one at this point, and maybe Mike Brown wanted to just ride with the hot hand, but I personally think he should have taken a timeout there, and I think that was their best chance to avoid overtime altogether. Ultimately, again, this is a moot point. It doesn't matter because the Kings still won in overtime. So, again, I'm just kind of being picky and nitpicky here. But the reason I'm also bringing this up is I asked Mike Brown after the game. I asked Mike about that decision, and he gave a very, very good explanation as to why he elected to not use his timeout and just let it flow. Mike, there at the end of the fourth quarter, what goes behind the decision to just let De'Aaron and the team ride for those final 11 seconds when you have a timeout?
What I've experienced is just, if you can go against a defense that's not set, you're going to have a better chance, especially as fast as Foxy is. Now guys are scrambling, they're pointing. If you can get by the first wave, they're usually not there to crowd that paint. And so I think of that, and then I always think of who's on the floor. Because if you call a timeout to drop a play, they're going to get their 5 best defensive guys out on the floor. And it could be a grind getting a good look. And so, you kind of struggle with it. There was a few nights ago where I took a timeout, and I shouldn't have. I can't even remember who the opponent was, but I shouldn't have, just based on who was on the floor for our opponent. And so if you're tied, if it's a 1-point game, especially with our guys, and they had to score to tie it and or take the lead, I'll probably let it ride.
This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. Now, some of you, I'm recording this and it's already Super Bowl Sunday, so I know you're listening to this on Super Bowl Sunday. First off, go Eagles. Can't like the Chiefs as a Raiders fan. Can't root for the Chiefs as a Raiders fan. So sorry, 49ers fans. It's go Eagles for me. But whether you're betting on the Super Bowl or betting on basketball or whatever it is, FanDuel is the only app that you need at your Super Bowl parties today. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Like, for example, if you download FanDuel now and you can bet on Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet, you'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And best of all, when you win, you get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, I appreciate you putting up with the technical difficulties. I appreciate those of you who have stayed up really late to wait for this podcast, and those of you who are listening to it tomorrow before the Super Bowl. You guys are incredible. The support that you show not only helps this podcast get so much success, but allows me so much personal success. I've shared this already, but just to remind you, I am going to be in Salt Lake City to cover my first AllStar Game. Doing it for ABC 10 and, of course, for Locked On. I'll do Locked On Kings podcasts from All-Star Weekend with some other Kings media that are going, and who knows, maybe some great guests that I'll be able to grab there. I have no idea, but I'm very much looking forward to it. And it's because of the support that you've shown me over the 6 years that I've been hosting Locked On Kings and the 1 year that I've been at ABC 10, at least in a sports position, and the multiple years that I was at 1140 KHDK Radio. It's because of that support that I've gotten this far and I'm at where I'm at. So I'm very thankful to you. And those of you who are going to Salt Lake City for All-Star, if you are, let me know. I would love to say hi to you. Those Locked On Kings listeners who lived in Salt Lake City would love to say hi to you as well. So let me know and please reach out. Before we get there, though, the Kings have one more game left against the Phoenix Suns. Now, I'm not going to go super extreme and say that this is a must-win game for the Kings, but considering that you've already lost to the Suns once this year, and considering that Kevin Durant is more than likely, I'm just going to assume Kevin Durant is going to play in the final 2 games of the Kings and Suns after the All-Star break, this one without Kevin Durant might be one that you absolutely have to get. So, and of course, you want to go into All-Star break feeling better and going in with a win instead of a loss. So Tuesday's game will be big. Of course, I'll have a post-game pod after that. And I'm looking forward to that as always, looking forward to covering the All-Star break. And if you haven't seen my interview that I did a sit-down one-on-one interview with Sacramento Kings head coach Mike Brown. I did that yesterday or the day before the first Dallas Mavericks game. Go and check that out too. A 12-minute interview, just myself and coach one-on-one. I really enjoyed that. Some of you have already seen that and given me your support on that. Again, that's not possible without the support that you've shown me over the years. So go and give that a listen or a watch and let me know what you think about that. Of course, I want to hear and see your thoughts on tonight's win
The atmosphere inside the Golden One Center was incredible. I can't wait for an actual playoff game in here so we can top that if it's even possible. It's just so many good vibes right now. So much fun, even with how the first game against the Dallas Mavericks went, even with the disappointment around the trade deadline that I know a lot of you felt. We're still all having fun. We're all wanting the same thing, and this is just really enjoyable right now. So I appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.